Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because, wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack.
That's rude. It's not nice. It's not bullying. What fresh hell?
Laughing in the face of motherhood. Nobody sees their role in bullying correctly. With Margaret Aples
and Amy Wilson.
Oh, isn't it interesting to find out how the worm turns?
A podcast that solves today's parenting dilemmas
so you don't have to. You hone yourself and smooth every edge to fit in exactly that shape. Hello, everyone, and welcome to What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy, and this week we're talking about bullies.
Oh, bullies.
Bullying, being bullied. A couple weeks ago, we talked about when kids have trouble making friends, and kind of came from the point of view of when your kid is maybe doing something wrong, not being their own best advocate in the friend-making space and how to help them with that. This is the other end. This is somebody's coming at your kid with unwelcome aggression. And how do you know when it's something that they need help with? And then how do you help? It's super tricky.
Yeah. And I have to say, one of the hardest of all the things, I think, like from an emotional level, when you have a kid who you love and adore and think hung the moon, and people are giving them a really hard time based on like their weakest qualities, I think it just brings out the mama bear. And I think it's painful. Like, of the things I have really like cried about as a parent, this is up there. Just someone being mean to your kid stinks.
Judith Warner wrote a book called And Then They Stopped Talking to Me. It came out about 5 years ago. And about middle school and about relational aggression, which we're going to talk about. And her whole point, the interview's excellent. I'll link to it in the show notes. Her whole point is that when this stuff comes around again, it does trigger memories of having been this kid for yourself. And it's really hard to watch your kid go through it. And so that becomes part of the thing you have to watch for before you go lioness or mama bear and call the other parent. You know what I mean? You need to figure out how much of this story is you reliving your 11-year-old lunch money being stolen story.
Oh, a lot of it. And I had a couple of years of bad bullying. I will say I have also been the participant in bullying at some points in my life. And then I have a sister who had a bullying situation that was bad enough that she had to change schools at one point. So like, and I remember it's one of those like seared, vivid childhood memories that is like the feeling the helpless and upset feeling I had about it as a child on behalf of my sister is just very vivid for me. It stinks. It's so hard.
I lost a year of high school to being bullied and, not wanting to go to school and stomach aches every day and nobody's talking to me. And I definitely globalized it. A couple of girls were being mean to me and stopped speaking to me, and started shunning me. And I went to a big public high school, and I think most kids were dimly aware this was occurring or not aware this was occurring. But to me, it was the top story in the news. Everybody knows not to talk to me. And I think some kids were like, I better not talk to her because there's some beef and I'm not getting on the wrong side of that. So I'm just going to ignore her also.
Right. Whatever's going on with her, she's kryptonite. Stay away.
Right. Stay away from the kryptonite. But then there were other kids who were like, I'm late for math class. Like they were not, they were not clued into this. But to me, it was like, Game of Thrones, like the shame walk every day at school. That's what's happening. Everybody knows that nobody's supposed to talk to me. And climbing out of that is really hard.
Absolutely. And I think that bullying is the kind of thing that it feels like, oh, it's little rascals and kids with your lunch money. But I went to a large public school as well, where there were situations where there were kids who had facial differences, illnesses, who were relentlessly tortured and bullied. Like, it's hard to even look back on how bad it was. And I know at least 2 adults who are involved in PTSD counseling around how bad the bullying was for them in high school. And gosh, I hope it is changing to there is a little bit more awareness around it. But I mean, this can be absolutely damaging and relentless. And I do think that back in our day, there was a little bit of like, kids will be kids, and that's not really the parents' fault and problem. And
see if this is familiar to you. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. That was the advice when you're like, nobody's speaking to me as I walk through the hallways. That's sticks and stones.
Let me lay this one on you. I'm rubber and you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off of me and sticks to you.
Remarkably ineffective.
No, doesn't work. Not actually the answer to bullying, as it turns out. The other thing I will say about bullying is that this is really just occurring to me as we talk about it, but this has been a construct that's been useful to me in other ways on the podcast. It is something very unique to childhood in the way that it happens, that you have to get up and go to a place all day, every day, where there are people who have devoted their lives to making your life a living hell by torturing you verbally. Like, it's just, at work, you would go to HR if this was happening. If I do think that there is adult bullying, I do think that there are like mom friend cliques where they ice people out, and it can be very damaging. But the completely sealed environment of a school where you're walking in to spend 8 hours against your will with a group of people, I think is a unique to childhood situation.
So here's an interesting statistic. Charisse Nixon, she's a psychologist. She researches bullying as part of her work with adolescents. 7% of kids that she, has studied in her research report experiencing physical aggression on a daily or weekly basis, like give me your lunch money kind of bullying, right? Being pushed into lockers kind of bullying. But 50% of kids in grades 5 through 12 have experienced relational aggression at least monthly. And relational aggression, it's interesting, as you and I are talking about bullying and what's so hard, and my experience and your sister's experience, it's relational aggression. It's not being punched in the face. It's being shunned. It's being, being told that you're ugly, that kind of thing. That relational aggression is really, really common and harder to detect from the outside, I think, for teachers and coaches and things to see that it's happening.
Yeah, and it feels like it isn't, the relational aggression is an interesting term because it does feel like it is an age of young people coming into a very certain kind of power, right? That it happens in this very way of like, I can't control much, but the 6 of us can turn our backs whenever Amy walks in the room, and like, it lights you up. It feels good on some level.
I was this kid. So like, as you were saying before, I've been on both sides of this, and it took me a long time to come to terms with that I have been the bullied and the bullier. And definitely when I was in middle school and I was like, okay, you guys, we all have to stop talking to this kid because she's holding us back. I definitely thought that I was acting in the best interests of myself socially and the rest of the people, because she was, she was a loser. She was weird, and she always wanted to talk about weird things, and we can't be friends with her anymore because we have to. It seemed essential to me, and her feelings did not enter the picture. And it lasted, I will say on my own defense, it lasted like a week. But even that's not on my own defense. It lasted a week because the other girls came to me and like, this is too mean. We can't do it. And I'm like, okay, fine. We stopped.
Mafia Don, Amy Wilson.
I didn't have the votes, you know?
They were like, we don't have the stomach for this, Wilson.
I tried to oust the speaker and I didn't have the votes in the end. So yeah, I was overruled. Yeah. So that's not really in my defense.
Wow. And then did anyone turn on you as a result?
Oh, isn't it interesting to find out how the worm turns? Yes. Who do you think was one of the, chief architects of my junior year disaster? The same girl. Same girl.
The one you tried to oust.
The one I tried to oust. And
It's Game of Thrones out there, people. It's Game of Thrones.
It took me decades to be like, oh, I did it to her first. I didn't realize it until I was definitely 30.
As they say, if you're going to shoot for the queen, you better kill the queen. Because if you leave her wounded, you left her wounded and she came back.
She was not the queen in 7th grade. And then all of a sudden, in 11th, 12th grade, she was on the homecoming court. That stuff happens. I was telling my daughter that. My daughter's in high school now. And of course, this stuff is a frequent topic of discussion. And then I said, okay, in 6 months, this is going to be different. The planets and stars just move through the sky. Things are going to shift. I know it feels like everything is, this can't change and this has to be this way. And you can't talk to this one because they're in that friend group. I'm like, you're right. It feels that way now. It won't feel that way. In 6 months, things are just going to change, even if you don't do anything. But I understand that right now it feels immutable and impossible.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think we've told stories on the podcast before about being bullied. And I remember people kind of reaching out to us because now in this world, we're coming from the point of view of we have a podcast and we're the people talking into the mics and we seem like we have a lot of answers or have it together in some way. And the idea to some people that both of us were the complete social outcasts who were getting the absolute brunt of the bullying was interesting in and of itself. But that's right.
Yeah.
In some neighboring school, there was a girl she was on a TV show, I think a soap opera or something. And it seemed like she should be the most popular kid in school. And she was
from all right.
bullied. Its difference at that age is so bad. And people were like, what kind of freak is on TV? I mean, what a weird thing to pick out about somebody. And I'm like, wouldn't you want to be friends with the kid who's on TV? You can go and eat their craft services. But it's just hard to say.
Well, did she think she was great?
I mean, I don't know all the details. I just know that she had a terrible time at school. Sometimes in schools, the goal is to become the perfectly sanded block of wood that fits in perfectly with all the perfectly, not even plain. It's whatever the shape is, you hone yourself and smooth every edge to fit in exactly that shape. And that somehow being on TV made you different than that shape. And being fat made you different in that shape.
Not living in a nice house makes you different from that shape.
Having an accent, eating strange lunch that your parents from a different country prepared. Your inability to hone yourself into that perfect shape. And also, I think, in a more complicated way, as a mom of kids who have some differences that are personality differences, your obsession with the biomes of the world that you want to talk about 20 hours a day, or your extremely adorable, passionate interest in the planet Mars, or whatever the difference might be. You're not in the perfect shape and therefore you must be destroyed is some sort of weird instinct that kids have.
And girls more than boys. I actually looked into this because the stereotype of relational aggression is mean girls, right? And I thought, is that an unfair stereotype? Do boys do this? And so I did a little dig on this, and turns out, yes, experts do say this is more common in girls than in boys. And the reason they suggest is because girls are more verbal at an earlier age, that they tend to relate in verbal ways. And boys are maybe a little more bam bam and tend to relate in more physical ways. Make of that what you will. But I did dig and try to find that it was, a sexist stereotype that only girls do this. And the research seems to kind of bear out, yeah, this is more often girls than boys than do the relational aggression part. More often, not never.
Yeah, I think boys probably the physical aggression part a little bit more, right? Doesn't that seem to track?
Yes. Well, when I was in high school, I had this tough year, ended up hanging around with boys. Do you remember the show Square Pegs? Goldilocks alert.
Back in my day. I mean, do I remember? Would you like me to recite several episodes of would you like me to sing this Square Pegs, Square Pegs theme song? I mean, what do you want?
Starring Sarah Jessica Parker as a teenager or like 20s, playing a teenager or something before Sex and the City. And she was the square peg and Muffy Tepperman was the popular girl. And
played by?
Oh, Jamie Gertz.
Jamie Gertz, correct.
Ding, 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 ding. And Sarah Jessica Parker hung around. It was kind of like Pretty in Pink or any of these things. Like,
well, I mean, look at our example. Now Sarah Jessica Parker stars on the show about like the most attractive woman in New York City, basically. It's funny.
But she wore glasses on Square Pegs, see? So she was ugly.
Can I tell you a quick fun fact?
Yes.
We went on the Universal Studios tour whenever Square Pegs was on, we were so into it. And there was, Sarah Jessica Parker was like the film on the bus that plays, like it's like they make them film little things for the tourists on the bus. And she's like, here's a fun fact about me. And she took her braces off. They were like fake retainer braces. And my sister and I were like, what? And we still talk about it to this day. We use that as like a touchstone metaphor where like when something really surprising happens, I'll say to my sister, it was a Sarah Jessica Parker taking off her braces moment.
Sarah Jessica Parker also had her natural hair in Square Pegs, it was before flat irons. It was not a beautiful head of hair. It was a large head of hair though. Anyway, so she's only friends with boys on Square Pegs. And that's how I was. And I remember my friend who was a boy who wanted me around sometimes. And sometimes he wanted to like go hit on girls. So I was not, it's not always the right sidekick for him. But he always felt like, just go punch X in the face. Just go walk up to her and just punch her in the stomach, and that will bring an end to this. And I look back on this jailhouse style, and of course I couldn't do it, and I didn't do it. And I look back and I wonder if my friend Neil might have had a point.
We'll be right back.
Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH.
Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand. And it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women, tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today and let us surprise you.
Okay, so usually in part one, we were fired up about bullies, but usually in part one, we try to define the problem. So I think we should take a second to define what bullying is, because I think especially with bullying, I do find myself on occasion saying to my children, that's not bullying. Because they're like, oh, I got bullied today. Someone said they didn't like my dress. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. That's not bullying. So let's define what bullying is.
This is Signe Whitson. I'll put the link to her in the show notes. This is what she does. She's a national speaker on bullying. She talks about it all the time. And she has this excellent sort of framework, I think excellent, of breaking down, is it rude, is it mean, or is it bullying? Because I think not only do kids rush to that, but parents rush to that too. Like my kid was bullied. So something that's rude. This was a very useful example she gave. If something's rude, it's spontaneous, it's thoughtless, it's maybe poor manners, but it's not actually intended to, ruin somebody's life. The example she gives is somebody comes into her and says, my daughter was bullied. And she says, what happened? And they're like, she was getting off the bus and this boy threw a handful of leaves at her like in the fall. Threw leaves at her. Can you imagine? And she says, has this boy done this to her before? Like, well, no, but you can bet it'll never happen again because I'm putting a stop to this bullying. And she's like, well, what did your daughter do? Well, she threw some leaves back at him. And then what happened the next day? Oh, they just rode the bus. Like, okay,
we need a little sound effect. That's not bullying.
That's rude. It's not nice. It's not bullying.
Yeah. And another kind of stem off of that tree, branch, shall we say, is a lot of questions. And so Britt Hawthorne talks about this in one of our episodes, Curious Questions. So there are kids who might have differences that kids ask questions about. That's also not bullying. We can talk to kids about what's appropriate. It is certainly not a kid's job who has any kind of difference to spend their entire lives explaining themselves to the world.
Right. Being the ambassador for, limb differences.
Being the ambassador and being the person who explains why I have a limb difference all day, every day to everyone who asks, because that's just a curious question. So that might be something to work with educators around, but kids asking questions about other kids is not.
Yeah. Or even if they're like, ew, why does your lunch smell weird? That's rude. That's rude.
Rude. But that's what I mean. It's not that it's okay. It's just not bullying.
All right. So let's go one more step to mean. The Signe Whitson says, okay, mean is one more step. Mean is purposefully saying or doing something to hurt somebody once or maybe twice. And the example that she gives is, are you seriously wearing that sweater again? Didn't you just wear it on Tuesday? That's mean. That's intended to hurt. It's nasty. It's still not bullying, she argues.
You're a weirdo. Mean.
Yeah. But it's still not bullying. She says bullying is intentionally aggressive behavior repeated over time that involves an imbalance of power. The bullying has to entail three key elements. There's an intent to harm. There's that power imbalance, repeated acts or threats of aggressive behavior, or threats, right? So you get pushed into a locker, or I'm going to push you into a locker if you don't give me your lunch money. And no regret or remorse when the victim expresses their hurt.
That is such a good definition. I want to go back to something I said because I was talking about curious questions. That's kind of off this line entirely. All three of these things, rudeness, meanness, and bullying, are unacceptable. They're not okay. So you would correct somebody. I think a truly curious question is okay, there might be a better way to ask that, or this is why this is not this person's obligation to answer. That's probably harmless. Rudeness, which is belching in someone's face, don't do that. It's rude. Saying you're a weirdo, you shouldn't do that. It's mean. Bullying is just, it's farther down the line. But I think the idea of intentionally aggressive, repeated over time, imbalance of power is a really interesting triangle to think about with bullying. An imbalance of power could be two fourth graders, but one who's got 6 friends picking on one who has maybe not as many.
And it can be so hard to see from the outside. I'm not going to name names, but one of my kids was in pre-K, and there was a kid in their pre-K class who ruled the coat room, the area, the pegs where they hang up.
Oh, man.
This kid.
Not the coat room queen. That's tough.
And I would hear about it from my child. This kid determined who was allowed to talk to who could be in the block corner and who could be in the dress-up corner.
Cersei Lannister of the coat room, basically.
Yes, nothing got past this kid. I'm sure the teachers were totally unaware it was happening. Well, I know they were, and it was because there was a little bit of a vacuum. The usual teacher was out on maternity leave. And so the less experienced teacher who had replaced that teacher, I think, was a little more oblivious to just how much time was being spent whispering in the coat room area of the pre-K. Anyway, 2 kids from that class did not come back for kindergarten. 2 kids left out of a class of like 15 because it was like so rough to show up every day, the mean streets of this pre-K. And
who wants to deal with Cersei Lannister of the coat room every morning before you've even had your snack?
Yeah. And it was like 4 or 5-year-olds. And of course, 5 years later, that kid is not running anything, but it's this weird moment in time that can occur. And to the people who are in it, I guess this is the part that's important, that power imbalance can exist even if it's completely imperceptible or mostly imperceptible to the adult. Right? Like you'd look at this and be like, why is this kid getting to say who you can play with? What are you talking about? But to the kids, it was ironclad and real.
And real for everybody involved. And I do think there's a complicating factor with bullying that is good kids, bad kids. And that bullying is very complicated. And what I have seen play out in my kids' school is kids who are bullied become the bullies later on. Kids who are the square peg to teachers, like they're kind of the difficult kid, become bullies later on because they need some source of power. Some kids are just like, these are just my friends and we're just having fun. Like we're just like this and we just really don't like her and we're expressing that and that's our right. But like nobody sees their role in bullying correctly is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't mean it's an excuse. It doesn't mean that bullies are actually great people at heart. It doesn't mean any of that. It's just that it's more complicated than I have known situations where I would have clearly identified someone as the bully and then had a conversation with their parent and they're like, it's so hard for him, school, because he's constantly bullied. And I'm like, wait a minute. I totally picture your kid as like the kid stealing lunch money. And I think that the constellation of bullying is very hard. And I know people who are school administrators, and I think it is very, very challenging. Everybody sees it very much from their own point of view.
So let's talk about helping kids who are being bullied.
Let's do that. That seems hard.
And I think, knowing the difference, like where are we on these steps is very different to sort of calibrate your response and help the kid calibrate their response.
Yeah, I have a kid who, as a younger person, had a little, you can print them out online now. And the question was, how big is this problem? And it would be like, it's a huge problem, like someone, something terrible has happened, or like you've lost something precious, and calibrating the problem of bullying. And it was a visual thing to help kind of be like, how big is this problem really? I think calibrating bullying is the first step.
Probably, this is ironic, but if your kid is coming home and the first thing they say when they throw down their backpack is like, Billy's being mean, then that is probably an indication, not that you shouldn't discuss it and help your kid with it, but that it's probably not bullying, because Katie Hurley, who's a psychotherapist who works with adolescents, points out that the kids who are being the most bullied kind of go internal and don't come home and say, I'm being bullied every day. I'm really scared. I'm really unhappy. I know I didn't. I brought it up once in a while to my parents, and then my parents didn't really know what to do, right? It is hard to know what to do with these situations. And I stopped talking about it, which didn't mean it wasn't in the forefront of my mind 24/7. But what was the point of talking about it? And so there might be cases where your kid is being bullied and you're going to have to clue into that for reasons besides them coming home and telling you.
Yeah. And man, there's some projection that goes on here too, because I think that often we have certain kids who we worry about with this. Like, oh no, they're so, different and they're so expressive, or they're, on the spectrum and they have some strange behaviors and I know they're going to get bullied. And that we miss sometimes like our kid who is a go along, get along kid, and maybe doing well in school and a strong student who it's like, oh, Sally can handle anything. I don't really worry about her. Like, if you're seeing that quietness, something might be going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Katie Hurley says school refusal, wanting to quit activities, avoiding peer interactions, stomach aches, not being able to sleep, that kind of stuff, you might want to, find out a little more. And then once you get them to open up, let's talk about what not to say. This is Sherry Gordon, is a bullying prevention advocate. Whatever you do, if your kid opens up to you like the kids are being mean to me, you lead with empathy and you don't tell them what they need to be doing differently than what they're doing.
What about saying, I'm going to go to the school and kick that kid's butt for you? Is that okay?
I think there are times when a parent should get involved, not by kicking the kids, tush themselves. Yeah, but you don't try to figure out what your kid's doing wrong or what your kid's doing differently. This was one that's like, that hit home for me like, okay, right, I get it. That's assuming it's the victim's fault. And it's also assuming that if you then you just tell them you're just going to have other friends, that'll work. Like, it's not going to work. The bully's enjoying inflicting this suffering on the kid being bullied. There's nothing they can say or do that's going to make it magically turn around or go away. They're delighting in their misfortune. So it's definitely not your kid's fault.
Yeah, and it can't be fixed. I remember my sister was being bullied in an age where there was like practically a uniform. It was like a Benetton shirt that literally everybody had. And I remember my mom was very like, we don't need labels. That's silly. And I was like, please just buy her the shirt. Just buy her the shirt. And the reality is, it was too late. Like, if she had then showed up in the shirt, it would have been 10 times worse for her,
Proof that she was a loser. Right.
Oh, what a loser that you now bought the shirt to try to be friendly with us. And I remember totally seared in my brain a dad getting on the bus when I was in elementary school and yelling at all the kids on the bus to be nicer to his kid, who was an odd kid with some differences, who was being, I'm sure, viciously bullied back in the day. And let me tell you, it did not make that kid's life better. It made it a ton worse. And oh my God, this poor dad, he was like a tough dad, New Yorkie dad, being like, listen, you little kid, and I remember just being like, oh my God, get off the bus. You're sealing her fate right now,
There are times when you do have to get involved, and I actually have a little bit of advice that worked for me on how to know when to get involved and when to hold back. I'm going to hold back, though. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet.
After this.
My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com.
All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that: taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE.
What people really think about the number of children you have from the What Fresh Hell podcast. No kids.
When are you two going to have a baby already? Don't wait too long.
One kid.
When are you two going to have another baby already? Don't wait too long.
One boy, one girl.
You must be so relieved. One of each. You can stop now.
Two girls.
Are you going to try for a boy?
Two boys.
You must be so scared that if you try for a girl, you're going to get another boy.
Three kids.
Whoa. You've got your hands full there, Mama, huh?
Four kids.
I think they must be religious.
Five kids.
The minivan is now full. It's time to stop procreating.
Six kids.
When does your reality show premiere?
This has been What People Really Think About the Number of Children You Have from the What Fresh Hell podcast.
Dr. Lisa D'Amour, who we've had on the podcast, I think twice. She's amazing, adolescent psychologist.
Returning guest, rarely seen.
Rarely seen, exactly. And she talks about that when your kid comes to you with their troubles, whatever they are, bullying or otherwise, that the question to ask them is, do you feel like you can handle this? Or how are you going to handle this? Do you think you can handle this?
Oh, that seems really smart to me. Really smart.
Yeah. And so without giving too much detail, one of my kids was having trouble being bullied by somebody that they had been in a relationship with and weren't any longer. And can you handle this when there was a little bit of online bullying happening, which we didn't even talk about yet, cyberbullying? Yes, I can handle it. Yes, I can handle it. Yes, I can handle it. Then one day the kid started taking pictures of themselves outside our house.
Oh.
And my kid was very upset. And I said, do you need help handling this? And finally, like, yes, I need help handling this.
That seems really smart to me.
Yes, parent-to-parent conversation was had, and it was resolved. If not in the most calm way possible, it was resolved. But it just was so clear when this kid, okay, this has now moved into something that this kid can't handle on their own. But it really helped me just to have that question. That was how I knew when the kid needed help. When the kid said, yes, this is different. This has crossed a line.
I think bullying is also often the first thing that your kids deal with that you really can't fix. I mean, that's not true if your kid has been ill or your kid, there's lots of things we can't fix. But I think acknowledging at a certain point that this can't be fixed, but we are going to put safety barriers around it as much as possible and that this will change. I feel like the biggest thing, having seen a really tough bullying situation in my household with my sibling, was that the dinner table every night that was like, kids are terrible at this age. And like the teachers are aware of it. Everybody around you is helping to keep you safe, but there is very little we can do to control this other person's behavior. They'll get in trouble at school, maybe. It might make it worse for you, though, in the short or long term. But your safety is what we are concentrating on. And I found during bullying times that having a home to come back to where people were saying, this behavior is wrong and bad. We have no respect for the people who are doing it, but you are safe here. And we are putting kind of guardrails around this to keep you safe is the thing that made it feel the best. Not like we are going to make sure this stops. You're not going to make sure it stops. Like a kid can corner your kid 6 times a day and be like, I don't care what anyone says. You stink. Like it cannot be controlled. You cannot control other people's behavior. And that kid can get sent to detention 1,000 times. And then the terror of that kid walking back in the room from detention after they know you've sent them there is always going to feel terrible. And so I think very clear and frank conversations is something you need help with. Because making the bully sit down with your kid and be like, you used to be such good friends. What happened? Not going to work.
No, Katie Hurley is like, don't do that. Do not. That's not a good idea. It happened in my situation in high school, and it was definitely counterproductive. It just added way more wood to that fire. Can you believe she went to that teacher? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you two are going to sit down and get around. And I mean, I live in a small town and the kids are in the same school from basically K through 12. It's the public school, but there's no merger schools and stuff. And so it's tough because I know all of the parents of we've been sitting around at birthday parties since the kids were in kindergarten. And I also think that rule of, is this something you need help with? Because I'm often tempted to pick up the phone and be like, hey, Jill, do you know that your kid's being a jerk to my kid? But suddenly, again, you're just adding fuel to you might be prolonging something that would have died on its own. And I think, and I've had kids in this situation, I remember my sister being in this situation, it might be time to remove yourself from this for a couple of days. Just go to school, go to your classes. You don't have to hang out with them after school and be involved in this mess. And I think that for kids who have a lot of trouble handling social interactions, it's not okay to isolate. Like, I'm in my room all the time and I have nothing to do and I'm just, perseverating over how terrible this is. But I have seen kids stop socializing for a couple of months. They're not walking into town after school. They're not hanging out with friends. They're not ready to figure it out for themselves. And so they're taking 2 steps back.
Katie Hurley also suggests having a touchstone at school, like helping your kid identify who that is. And not so that then there can be these meetings between them and the bully, but just so they have a place to go. When I was in high school, I had a drama teacher whose office, it was just sort of tacitly understood. And she was the one in the end who was like, we're putting an end to this. I'm bringing those girls in. We're having a conversation right now. It was not a good idea, even though it was very well intentioned.
No, right.
But I always could go hang out with her at lunch, after school, before school. I was always welcome in her office.
Right, because let me tell you, when the bully gets called in and says, you are being mean to Amy, who is wonderful. What don't you see here? The bully is experiencing that as Amy was put on this earth to make me crazy. And she is terrible. And I need to make other people see that. Like, no one is sitting down and being like, great point. I have been unkind. Not nobody, but most people are not.
It's the point for bullies. And that was part of the definition, that it's intended to wound, and being told that it's hurtful is not going to change you. That's why you're doing it.
Right. And I think there is a definition in the bully's mind that, like, this person has earned this. This person, if people could see this person truly, they wouldn't think I was being mean. They would understand. It's that kids have very rigid thinking. I think that's why approaching it from like bad person, good person in the situation is damaging. I think it can't be fixed on some fundamental level. And I will say that I think a lot of schools have gotten better at this. Schools often have a counselor. They have an office that's called like friend zone or whatever. There are designated places where kids can go during that time. And I think that helping your kid find that safe place is the solution, not getting the bully to come over and explaining that your kid is really great.
If you could talk, sometimes this happens and you're friends with the other parent, like, I can't believe this is happening. But I know, having tried to talk to that other parent, and I know having been that parent who's approached, the quote unquote bully's parent either has no idea what you're talking about or has heard a completely different version of events.
Absolutely.
Amy's mean, and that's why we can't be friends with her anymore, because Amy's mean. And maybe your kid did do something to to annoy this kid, and then it just tips over into this other thing. But we can end up being like, I want to throttle this other kid's mother. Why doesn't she stop this? Why doesn't she? I thought we were friends. But the truth is, there's 2 sides to every story, and that other adult is getting a very different story that's maybe not 100% false.
Well, exactly. And very tricky. So let's talk about that a little bit when our kids are the bullies, because I think it's important.
Well, I think it's probably worth talking with them that relational aggression counts as bullying and it's not okay. And we're not going to purposefully exclude other kids or stop speaking to them or shun them. That's just about the worst thing you can do. And that is bullying. I had a conversation with one of my kids about that recently. Well, that's not bullying. That's just mean. I'm like, I think it's bullying. Because I have, throughout my kids' lives, I loved this structure of rude, mean, bullying. Is it this or is it this? I think this is pretty bad, actually. And my kid didn't think it was. So it was an interesting conversation.
Yeah. And again, it is circular. Like, well, we were all friends, but this kid has behaviors that are so, like, they always cry during the game. They always take the ball and go home. They always have a tantrum that I think it's hard. And I worry sometimes. I feel like I'm very oriented towards the, like, you have to be nice to everyone. And I was raised that way. And there are ways in which it has not served me. Like, I have ended up in situations where I am being overly kind to someone who is really being inappropriate with me because I have an overdeveloped sense of, like, we must show kindness. And it's very, very complicated. I think, like, especially with my daughter, I'll say, I sometimes worry that I'm like, we have to always, like, go out of our way to be kind. And it's like, but maybe not to the boy who's, like, doing something really inappropriate to you. Like, you also have to state your boundaries. Like, that you can't in this situation land on a correct answer. But I do think one of the things that I try to practice that I think is useful is, how do you think that person would feel? Like, put yourself, how do you think that person would feel that this group of 7 of you who have always been friends is now a group of 6? Yes, I understand that that person is frustrating. Also, I will tell you, I've had kids say, listen, the other 4 people really don't want this person invited. And I think it's complicated. Like, does your kid have to stand against 4 on behalf of 1 who does have really annoying behaviors? It's very hard, but I think a constant conversation where you prioritize at least examining how must that feel? How must that kid feel for a kid who's coming into school and does not speak one word of the language that you all speak? How do you think that feels for them? I think constantly putting that in front of your kids is something that is useful.
There's this book called Each Kindness. Saddest book I've ever read. I could not get through it without crying. And it's a picture book. So it's for, I would say, 5 to 8 year olds. And it tells the story of a kid who's new to the school and her clothes aren't clean and she acts kind of weird and nobody plays with her. Nobody's nice to her in this class. Told from the point of view of, like, another kid in the kindergarten class. And, she's just a weirdo. And she kind of stands in the corner. I don't want to let her play with us. And so they don't. And then one day she's not there. She's only in the school for like 6 weeks and then she's gone again. And only after the kid is gone does the teacher sit down with the class and say, she's gone now. And was there anything that any of you could have done to be kinder to this child? And the scales fall from the narrator's eyes and she realizes that she could have done something nice. And she really wants now to go back and be nice to Abby or whatever the girl's name is. She wants to go back and let her sit with us, and it's too late. The kid's gone. And it's just the most, like, I think that's why it's so sad. It's so unresolved for a children's book. It isn't like, come on back, Abby. No, we're friends. Like, nope, too late now. And you were mean. It's a really lovely book for kids to help kind of understand, like, why this isn't okay. But boy, it's a tough one.
Yeah. And I really think that bullying, although we like to solve it, bullying it's one of those problems that only gets solved through 1,000 conversations. It doesn't get solved in the moment ever. It always is going to be the shifting sands of, and I mean, yeah, because it is super complicated. Like, generally kids are not bullying other kids because they're doing great themselves, but that's not something a 5-year-old should or needs to understand. It's a conversation that happens over your kid's lifetime and schooling. And also, one thing that we haven't touched on that I will touch on closely is that your kids turn out exactly how you are is kind of the rule of the whole podcast. So if we're spending all of our dinners talking about how weird and gross, cousin Shane's new boyfriend is and how he talks in this weird way and isn't it funny? And, that's not a great idea. Modeling the way you want your children to act is going to play a huge role in this. And I'm looking at myself. I mean, I'm a person who loves to make witty remarks and, are they sometimes at the expense of other people? Probably. And it's something that I will say was modeled to me as a kid, that whenever I can remember coming home and I had a teacher and I was like, oh, it's really funny. He has, this weird thing on his face and everyone calls him this. And I will never forget. I think I was in 6th grade. The look of, like, shame that came over my mother's face as she said, so you're saying that you're all laughing at someone who has something on their face? And I just was like, And just the I had been just caught like in my shame, basically. And I do think that the modeling goes a long way in this area.
Signe Whitson, this is going to be my closer, that understanding this rude, mean bullying thing is very important, because she argues if we use the word bullying when we don't mean it, it just becomes boy who cried wolf, and we stop paying attention when we need to pay attention. And we need to be able to all discern, kids and adults, when it's crossing the line between rudeness at the bus stop and bullying that's really, really getting this kid pretty stuck.
Agree. I'm feeling a part 2 on this one, Amy. I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface of some of the bullying stuff, haven't gotten into cyberbullying and some other stuff. So we may be back with even more bullying in the future. But I enjoyed this conversation. It was a good one.
Me too. Thanks for listening, everybody. Join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/whatfreshhellcast. Tell us what you thought of the episode. Give us your best advice. Tell us what you want to hear us talk about next.
Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
The right window treatments change everything. Your sleep, your privacy, the way every room looks and feels. At Blinds.com, we've spent 30 years making it surprisingly simple to get exactly what your home needs. We've covered over 25 million windows and have 50,000 five-star reviews to prove we deliver. Whether you DIY it or want a pro to handle everything from measure to install, we have you covered. Real design professionals, free samples, zero pressure. Right now, get up to 45% off site-wide, plus get a free professional measure at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.